Last week, I promised a video on what I called the unforgivable sin in the Ten Commandments. The least I can do is keep my promise, and I always try to do the least that I can. Shalom, my friends. Yes, one and only one of the Ten Commandments says that God will not exonerate one who violates it. I promised a video on it, and here it is. I have to say that it feels somewhat familiar, like I might have spoken about this before, which I definitely have, but perhaps it was not on the channel. On the other hand, we are getting very close to having put out 100 videos, so some overlap is inevitable, and if there are subjects worth revisiting, this is certainly one of them. So what is the commandment that both Exodus and Deuteronomy say God will not exonerate one who violates it? You might be surprised to know that it is not do not kill or do not commit murder. That's an interesting subject in and of itself. Which one is the more accurate translation? But the one that the Bible says is quote-unquote unforgivable is one that has been mistranslated at least since the 1600s in the King James Bible. Probably long before that. Here's the King James translation. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. This translation has created the misconception that saying the name God is a sin, except in certain circumstances, such as during prayer. But let's think about that. Could it possibly be that sometimes murder or adultery is forgivable, but saying, oh my God, is not? I have to believe that God has more moral clarity than that. I think the problem is in the translation. A very popular Jewish translation also gets it wrong, in my opinion. It says, you shall not swear falsely by the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not clear one who swears falsely by his name. That is a standard rabbinic interpretation of it, and I do think it gets closer than King James did, but I think it's still not quite right. There's a less popular Jewish translation, which takes a very literal route, but a literal translation is not always best. Imagine if you were with a non-English speaker who heard someone say, I have a frog in my throat, and you translated it word for word, literally, into the person's native language. It wouldn't be very helpful, would it? So in the same vein, this translation says, you are not to take up the name of the Lord your God for emptiness, for the Lord will not clear anyone who takes up his name for emptiness. It's pretty literal, but I think it gets us no closer to understanding the true meaning of the commandment. So you might be surprised to hear that this rabbi suggests that the most helpful translation comes from a Christian edition of the Bible. The New International Version, the NIV. Not that I've looked at every single Jewish translation. But NIV says, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. I think that now we're really getting somewhere. I think that this translation is the best one that I've put forth today. But it begs a question. What does it mean to misuse God's name? Especially in a way that would cause God to say he will not exonerate one who has transgressed it? I acknowledge there could be more than one answer to this question, and I'm only going to offer one today. So if you have other suggestions, please do leave your thoughts in the comment box below the video. I'd be very interested to read what you have to say. So what is my suggestion? Committing evil in the name of God is the ultimate misuse of God's name. I'm thinking about, for example, the 9/11 terrorists who killed thousands of people for religious reasons, which is to say, in the name of God. I'm talking about ISIS, who sawed off the heads of innocent civilians, or the terrorists who burned a fellow Muslim alive, all while chanting, "God is great." This, I believe, is the ultimate misuse of God's name. Attaching the holy name of God to the most heinous acts of evil imaginable. The damage this does to religion in general and to God in particular cannot be measured. And it makes sense to me that if violating one of the 10 Commandments is something God won't exonerate you for, it would be attaching the name of God to the exact opposite of what God stands for. Violence instead of peace. Murdering innocents instead of loving your neighbor. Killing the other, quote unquote, instead of love the stranger. So that is my thesis. The misuse of God's name is the best way to understand the commandment that says God will not exonerate one who violates it. And the ultimate misuse of God's name is committing evil in the name of God. Again, I invite other perspectives to be shared in the comments box. We can all learn from one another. I apologize if you heard my little dog complaining. This is actually the 4th time I've shot this video. Had some technical difficulties along the way, so I'm going to stick with this recording despite the interference. If you found the video worthwhile, would you please give it a YouTube thumbs up? And by the way, we are getting close to 300 subscribers. So if you have not become a subscriber, please consider doing so now. It costs nothing, and the more subscribers the channel has, the more YouTube will show my work to other viewers. If you would like to subscribe, you have to be logged into YouTube, but as long as you are, all you have to do is click on my face, which appears right over there. Or if you like, watch the last video I released by clicking on its icon right over there. Thank you, Zoe, for your input. Until next time, my friends, Shabbat Shalom.